This budget hearing conducted by the Committee on Appropriations and Adjudication now reconvenes. Discussions of the fiscal year 2018 executive budget request. This afternoon we are meeting with the Mayor's Council of Guam to discuss their budget proposal. I want to preface this budget hearing with the uncertainty of the government of Guam faces with regards to potential negative impacts to the general fund revenue collections and economic activity as a result of numerous factors such as H-2B visa denials, potential federal tax reform, and cuts that may erode GovGuam's revenue base, including a cap on the Section 30 to be collected. With these issues at the top of our mind, the Guam Legislature has a daunting task of ensuring that we provide funding for the public services the people of Guam want and need. As a brief overview, the executive budget request submitted by the Governor through BBMR provides a $54,675 increase in the operations to the Mayor's Council as compared to FY17. The Mayor's Council comes before us today with a budget request of 1.41, which is more than the FY17 authorized of 1.36, hence the $54,000 increase. I'd like to thank the Executive Director and Mayor Doris for coming today. And inasmuch as the Executive Director has been sworn in, you may begin your presentation.
Maling Tuluan in Zeus to the Igehilo y Legislatura, Speaker Benjamin Cruz, Igehilo y Comité en Mami, Senator Michael Nicholas, Senator Luis Munoz, Senator Jimmy Baudon, Vice Speaker Therese Terlaje, Senator Morrison, and Senator Mary Torres. I am Angel Sablan, the Executive Director of the Mayor's Council of Guam. Alpha. Today I come before you to seek your assistance in approving our FY18 budget. You know what the mayors do, and you know what they need to get it done. When it really comes down to it, all of you who have been in the previous legislative terms have always been receptive, attentive, and supportive to the needs of our villages, and always try to heed the call of our mayors and vice mayors. We thank you, and we also seek your continued support and those of our new senators. We especially thank our oversight chairperson, Senator Michael Nicholas, for taking the time and the effort to sit down with the officers of the council to exchange ideas and avenues on how we can be of assistance to the needs of the council. We fully understand that all of us in government must toe the line and try to be resourceful with what we have. Our budget as presented today is a no-frills budget that is straightforward and justifiable. Our budget request for FY18 is a slight increase from FY17. How, you may ask, can I say then that it is a no-frills budget? While we certainly can live with the same budget as FY17, the requested increase is only due to the additional requests of various mayors for additional personnel or contractual services and additional increased requests for the various village funds. Under personnel, out of the FY17 appropriation, we had to expend earlier this year an unanticipated $193,239.40 for a 50% payout on unused sick leave for mayors, vice mayors, and employees that opted to retire. We do have an unused balance of $111,523.40 from the lump sum appropriation for FY17 that we may be able to use to offset at least 2/3 of the sick leave payout, as this is also a lump sum payment. Hopefully, the Department of Administration will agree. For fiscal year 18, we are requesting $9,169,559 to cover the 214 authorized FTEs and inclusive of the 10 new FTEs we are requesting for the 4 larger populated villages and 2 for the village of Inarahan, as justified in her letter of request. Personnel costs also include an increase in the benefits request due to mandated percentage rates of government shares. Under the Mayor's Council of Guam Operations, for our operations request, it is practically status quo from the FY17 budget, except for the additional request of the Barrigada Mayor's Office of $67,000, as explained in her letter of request. The Mayor's Council is requesting a continued appropriation of $475,000 to provide $25,000 to each village for their operations. The mayors have depended on this small amount for each village as it supports the requests of many village residents in need of humanitarian assistance, such as medical emergencies and referrals, disasters like fire, and unexpected tragedies. We are fully aware that all villages vary in size, so the one-size-fits-all system really does not seem fair for the large villages like Dededo, Zigo, Manilo, and Tamuning. But we do with what you give us. The President's Contingency Fund and the Association of Mariana Island Mayors and Vice Mayors and Elected Municipal Council Members, request of $20,000 each, is also status quo. Under utilities, I think our mayors deserve an acknowledgement that because they have indeed lowered our costs for power and water, and it is reflected in this budget. We still have to work on lowering our telephonic costs. So in this category, we're actually asking for a reduction of $60,000. We also reduced our request for FY17 from FY16, but it was only for $8,484. Under office space rental, for the office space rental, we are simply asking the rental rates agreed upon, plus an additional 10% for the Mayor's Council office space, as we need to bid out at the end of this fiscal year for the Mayor's Council office space. We have an idea to offer later in my testimony about how we can save on renting space for the Mayor's Council. Our additional annual appropriations under the street maintenance and beautification. The current appropriation for this fund is $1,036,026 and is divided among the villages pro rata based on the 2009 Guam Roads and Pavement Inventory by the Department of Public Works after an initial distribution of $20,000 per village as mandated by law. As we all know, the current road mileage is significantly different from 8 years ago. The Department of Public Works cannot provide us with a current road pavement inventory as they have no funds to conduct one. How best to apportion these funds is left at your discretion. The only other justifiable way is to give villages with greater than 10,000 in population an increased share of the base amount, like an additional 5,000, and then divide the rest using only the road and pavement inventory available from DPW. We added an increase of $100,000 to this fund, but we will not argue if it is not approved. The Public Safety and Social Education Programs, PSSEP, the current appropriation for this fund is $416,860 and is divided equally among the 19 districts to support programs as mandated by law. These funds are expended in accordance with plans approved by each village municipal planning council. Again, we will not argue if the additional request of $100,000 is not approved. Under the Island-wide Village Beautification Projects, IWVBP, the current appropriation for this fund is $470,921 and is also equally divided among the districts. The mayors and vice mayors use these funds for maintenance and beautification of facilities and village roads. Ever increasingly, the mayors and vice mayors are beaten to the punch by illegal dumpers. While we try to plant trees and flowers, there are those who are more content to just plant trash and junk along the roads. Additional staff have had to deal with those who would rather graffiti or destroy what little the villages have for rather than using them for their intended purposes. These costs put a toll on the villages, but our request for an additional $100,000, again, is left at your discretion. Ground maintenance for schools, GMS. The FY17 budget for ground maintenance at schools is $481,957. This effort between MCOG and DOE is working, at least much better than what it was with a private contractor years ago. Some mayors are requesting, however, that we revisit the formula used by DOE in reference to the total acreage of the school versus total acreage that requires grass cutting. We have discovered that some schools may have a bigger land area, but they also have more concrete areas that do not require grass cutting. On the other hand, some schools have less acreage, but except where the school buildings are located, everything has grass that needs to be cut. So schools with less acreage get a lesser amount of funding, yet require more grass cutting than the larger area schools with more concrete areas. Nonetheless, the ground maintenance for schools project is working very well. Mayors have the flexibility to use their own personnel, purchase grass cutting equipment, fuel, and parts, or simply contract out to qualified vendors. There is no backlog of payment to the vendors, as it is from the Mayor's Council of Guam revolving account. We are requesting, however, an increase of $72,294, or a 15% increase, to account for the rising costs from vendors and equipment costs and maintenance. Host community funding. The Village of Wardour and Inarahan are the recipients of funds appropriated in this category. They have been receiving an annual appropriation of $150,000. It is directly appropriated to their Village Municipal Planning Council fund and is solely administered by their respective Municipal Planning Council. An expenditure report may be obtained directly from the mayors of these two villages. Our outside revenue sources and programs. The Senior Center operations. The FY17 grant for Senior Center operations thus far totals $639,174.70 and is administered by the Division of Senior Citizens of the Department of Public Health and Social Services. Practically, the entire amount is allocated for personnel, as we have seen a reduced grant amount from previous years. There are no additional funds for repair or maintenance of the 12 senior centers we operate. This is the reason we have included a request of $20,000 for each center in our FY18 budget. We will continue to honor our commitment to our Manamco and do all we can to provide them a viable and beneficial program with the assistance of the Department of Public Health and Social Services. The Limited Gaming Fund. For fiscal year 17, we receive an appropriation of $633,936 and was equally divided to all 19 districts at $33,365, except for Deredo, which received $1 more than the others. As these funds are continually received by the government monthly, we ask that the expected share of the Mayor's Council of 1/3 of the amounts received under the limited gaming taxes be again appropriated in our FY18 budget. While we still have a significant amount of left over in this appropriation, it is simply due to the fact that the repairs and or upgrade of village facilities go beyond the $33,365 allotted to the village. This is the reason it is imperative that we continue to receive our share of limited gaming funds to allow mayors to be able to bid out for the major repairs that are needed beyond the amounts they have available this year. Compact Impact Funds. As we have made previous legislatures aware, we have received since fiscal year 15 $500,000 for phase 1 and $500,000 for phase 2, and equally divided amongst the villages, plus an equal amount to the MCOG Central for administrative costs. These funds have been used by the mayors to upgrade their recreational facilities and centers. Phase 1 has an unused balance of $54,945.77, and Phase 2 has an unused balance of $148,062.60. Unfortunately, we can only use these funds as approved initially by DOI and cannot be reprogrammed for other expenditures without the express approval of the granting agency. Only a handful of villages have not yet expended as approved for. The tire shredding project. We received the go-ahead from the Department of Public Health and Social Services to avail ourselves of a $40,000 purchase order with Mr. Rubbishman to hold junk tires from the villages to Mr. Rubbishman for shredding. While news reports have Department of Public Health and Social Service claiming that this program was available to the mayor since early this year, it is actually only on April 10 that we were notified that the purchase order was in place, 3 months after they first brought the proposal to us. The mayors are very careful about announcing that this program is available. At $40,000, this is such a minute amount to deal with tires. At best, it would probably cover for about 500 tires out of the thousands we have laying around the island. Even the fact that we only started already, many tires are appearing overnight at mayor's offices without knowing who or where the tires came from. The villages were given authorization based on population, not on the amount of tires laying around in their village, with Dededo getting $11,280 and Umatic getting $200. I suggested that it would be cheaper to just cut the tire in half so that it would not be able to hold water. Better yet, legislation should be amended to require all entities that charge a tire disposal fee to immediately drill holes or cut tires in half. This way, we won't have to worry about future disposed tires holding stagnant water. The EPA Recycling Fund. FY17 is the first year we have not seen a penny to the Mayor's Council of Guam from the EPA Recycling Fund to deal with abandoned vehicles, loose metals, tires, batteries, electronic parts, and white goods. It has been a difficult time for the villages to assist in getting these recyclables dealt with. We would like to ask that the same manner in which the Limited Gaming Fund is appropriated directly to MCOG, that the same be done for the EPA Recycling Fund. Without a direct appropriation into our budget, it will be a long while before we see any allotment from EPA, as it is their contention that as long as payment to vendors who process recyclables with the incentive pay of $30 per ton with no cap on the payments, then they cannot release any funds to MCOG without a legislative mandate. It worked with the limited gaming appropriation. Please make it work with an EPA Recycling Fund appropriation. There is a bill to appropriate $400,000 to the Mayor's Council of Guam, introduced by Senator Talina Nelson, to divide equally among the districts. We request that this amount, if approved, be increased to a minimum of $500,000 to also include green waste, which is becoming a major concern to the mayors. Additionally, we ask that the miscellaneous provisions for prior year obligations, carryovers, and unexpended balances be authorized at the Mayor's Council in FY18 for our use in implementation. That is our budget. Simple, straightforward, and justified. The Mayor's Council of Guam has always been cooperative in keeping expenses and costs at a minimum. Our difficulties occur when we are mandated to do more, respond more, and give more without the corresponding funds to offset the more of what we do provide. We are confident, however, that you will support our request so the Mayor's Council of Guam can continue to do the good that it always strives to do for its residents. And now that I have asked for money, please allow me to offer ideas on how we can make or save money. Number one, we have just transmitted to the Speaker's office a request to authorize our districts to use a common and adopted user fee schedule. We would like to see the AAA process completed on this request. This would allow our districts to recoup some of the funds expended for maintenance and purchase of assets like canopies, tables and chairs, and use of our recreational fields, community centers, and the like. 2, we would like to end the practice of renting office space. The Village of PD is currently working with Congresswoman Madeline Bordario and the Governor's Office for the return of the previous USO location in PD. While we almost completed the transaction for the return of this property and for the use as the PD Mayor's Office and recreation area about a year ago, a hiccup in the liability clauses and payment thereof caused a halt in the negotiations. We are now back on track to try again. The Inarahan Mayor's Office can actually be someday located at the old Inarahan Elementary School grounds. We will work with the current mayor and his MPC to use some of its host community funds to offset costs of repairing and fully utilizing an abandoned government asset into a useful one. The MCOG main office will have to negotiate a lease on space before the end of this fiscal year. We have made it known our desire to use the former Department of Parks and Recreation building in Agana Heights. However, the Historic Preservation Office is still utilizing a portion of the building. Unless they are relocated, perhaps to the Antonio Palomo Museum or elsewhere, then we may have no alternative but to rent space again for fiscal year 18. And for those that may be interested, the OPA audited our FY16 non-appropriated funds, and for the second consecutive year has issued a clean opinion on those funds. Yes, there are still a few glitches in some of the villages, but the bottom line is we are improving and are accountable for the funds entrusted to the villages. Additionally, the audits of the liberation funds for FY13 and 14 by Ernst & Young have also been completed and given a clean opinion. And at the FY15 audit is ongoing to be immediately followed by FY16. And lastly, our new user-friendly website launched on May 20. While we are still uploading information for the public's use and knowledge, we ask that you take a look at mcog.guam.gov on Duncan Jesus Maasing.
Mr. Executive Director, thank you very much for a very thorough explanation of your budget. I appreciate that. It answered all the questions that I was going to ask, so I understand that your oversight chair has some questions and we'll allow him to ask them.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hafude, Angel. You know, the whole recent issue with the casino and the expenses for the Liberation Day festivities, the first thing that I was really concerned about was the parade, because if anything is steeped in culture and tradition, granted there's a whole bunch of different interpretations of it, you know, the parade is something that a lot of families look forward to. And I remember reading a report that said the parade was about $30,000 in expenses. And so the first thing I did was I immediately reopened your budget, and I looked around and I said, where can we find $30,000? And then there was an amount here that kind of jumped at me, and we made it a point to research this number further. And the amount that jumped at me was the off-island travel, because that amount was $40,000. And I said, okay, well, I know that at least here in the legislature, I'm responsible in my capacity as the rules chairman to sign off on all the travel request authorizations. And I can tell you I only signed off on one, and that one I only signed off on because the senator traveling assured me that there was going to be a federal reimbursement for the trip, and that turned out to be true. As a matter of fact, this month is the APIL, the Association of Pacific Island Legislatures, and the APIL is meeting from the 20th to the 26th, and I'm actually the appointed representative of the APIL. And I've made the tough decision to not attend because we're having these financial challenges. As a matter of fact, another colleague of mine, she came up to me and said, I want to go, I want to represent the legislature. And I said, first of all, you're not the APIL member. And secondly, it's just not, it doesn't go well when people are waiting for their refunds and the legislature is going out and traveling. So the legislature has, we've been canceling furniture orders. My colleagues know I've been a real stick in the mud with a lot of expense requests because I'm trying to marshal over every single dollar. I'm not, this financial reality that we talk about is not just a talking point. We're living it here in the Legislature, and it makes for sometimes a lot of face-to-face conversations and difficult decision making. So when I saw this travel line item and it was $40,000, and I said, okay, let me pull up this travel and see what's going on here so that we can figure out if we can find money for the Liberation Day parade. I came across the Mayor's Council of Guam Travel Expense Monthly Report. And the Sergeant at Arms can circulate this to all of our members present. This is the monthly travel expense report, and I'm assuming it's starting the beginning of this calendar year because we all pretty much got inaugurated in January. And so in this travel expense report, I see travel in February, in March, in May, almost every single month of this year. And it's not just one mayor traveling here or there. We're seeing large parties traveling every single month from the Mayor's Council. And so far, this travel from the beginning of this calendar year to today has expensed $49,317. And this travel, by the way, that could pay for the Liberation Parade. And this travel isn't just mayors. And, I was told to apologize in a previous hearing, but it's just my style. I kind of put people on the spot because I really expect an answer to the question. And Mr. Executive Director, you have traveled. And not just once, 1, 2, 3 times so far this year. And you're not even a mayor. And so I'm looking at all these numbers and I'm like, here I am. This is the policy-making body of the government of Guam. There is value for us going out there and experiencing policy outcomes and deciding whether or not we should mirror legislation based on how it's affected a community. And we're still being very tight about it. I'm being very tight with my colleagues. And then to just open this up after saying, let me dig a little bit deeper to find this, I have a very difficult time accepting it. And then I go into the detail. And the biggest group traveled in March for between 7 and 8 days. And it traveled to Manila to attend the Strawberry Festival. And I said, we don't even grow strawberries on Guam. We live a very near Spartan lifestyle in the Legislature this term because we're trying to be an example and we're trying to acknowledge the fiscal realities. In your testimony, sir, you said, and I circled these sentences. In your first paragraph, you say, we fully understand that all of us in the government must, quote, toe the line and try to be resourceful with what we have. Our budget as presented today is a no-frills budget. It is straightforward and justifiable. That's in the beginning. And in the end, prior to your suggestions on saving money, which was a little ironic, you close with saying, the Mayor's Council of Guam has always been cooperative in keeping expenses and costs at a minimum. And then you go on to say, our difficulties occur when we are mandated to do more, respond more, and give more without the corresponding funds to offset the more of what we do provide. And I hear that and I'm like, yeah, that's the narrative that I've heard over these years that I've been in office. But you are all traveling 10 times more than your own policymakers, the guys who make the laws. We are confident, however, that you will support our request that the Mayor's Council of Guam can continue to do the good that it always strives to do for its residents. And so I kind of sit back and I put it into perspective. And there are a number of things that are not lost to me in this conversation. The first of all is that, with this whole political pay raise thing, the mayor's got a very substantial raise also, And I told myself, okay, we've been down that road, we pulled back some of these pay raises, our people are somewhat satisfied with that. Maybe we can work out this carnival cost thing, I don't know. But you guys are making $75,000 a year. You're traveling every single month, groups of you. In February, there was 13 of you. March, there was 12. In May, there was 4. In May, the first week of May, there was 4. And in the third week of May, there was another 8. Every single month, there's 12 of you guys taking a trip. The first one was to Tinian and Saipan. I'm assuming that was for the inauguration. I think just our speaker went to that. 13 of you go. In March, the Strawberry Festival. In May, the Multiple Town Festival, revering our multiple heroes. And I'm assuming that was in Manila, because these are all in Manila. And then the third week of May, the 25th anniversary of Guimaras Provincehood and the Mangahan Festival, also in Manila. While we are making every concerted effort here to be as disciplined in our spending in the Legislatura, to turn around and see that the Mayor's Council is traveling like this, while at the same time saying things like, we don't get enough money and you're asking us to do more and we're going to have to cancel the parade. I'm like, how do we seriously reconcile this conversation? And so I wanted to ask, in the context of what you stated in your opening statement, and with respect to this travel report, how can you justify going to a strawberry festival when we don't even grow strawberries here? You need to turn the microphone.
First of all, I don't think you've ever heard me say that we will not have a parade. Maybe you've heard it from some other mayors. As far as the travel, these are mayors that have sister city relationships with the different entities in the Philippines. These are not all in Manila. The Strawberry Festival was in the municipality of La Trinidad. And they have a sister city relationship with the village of Agate, Derido, and Tamuni. The mayors don't only travel there, those mayors and their entities also travel here. In fact, they will be here for this year's liberation, and there certainly will be a parade for them to observe. I don't control the mayors as far as them accepting invitations to their sister cities. That's their own decision. When I go, it is because at their request that I come with them. I don't volunteer to go on these on my own. The sister city relationships have gone back many years. Except for a few villages, almost every village has a sister city relationship with someone or some entity, some municipality in the Philippines. In fact, just last week when we had the Mango Festival here, a group from the sister city of Agate were here to help celebrate. And granted, there is no strawberries here, but that's the festival that they got invited to, so that they don't see them how growing strawberries. They see them how they propagate things aside from strawberries. There's other crops that are propagated through these different municipalities. So as far as the request for travel, it is up to the individual mayor, and they would have to justify that on their own. Maybe perhaps this is something you can ask them. But as far as you can see for this fiscal year, I didn't request for any travel money. As far as the parade, like I said, is concerned, yes, I agree with you. It's something that has happened, and it will happen again this year. We will make it happen. We are already working with other entities to make sure that whatever expenditures we've had to deal with the parade, somehow, somewhere, we will make it happen.
If Agate, Dedidon, and Tamuning are the only villages that have a sister city relationship with La Trinidad, Manila, we have
Senator, I can
Sometimes-
give you the whole listing of all the mayors, the villages, and their sister cities. If
That's fine. I mean,
We'll send
but
it to you.
even in the greater context of just the times, all of you mayors have people in your villages who are waiting for the tax refunds.
well, I will relay that information to you and your concern to them.
And,
Mayor.
and all of the mayors have constituents who would love to attend the Liberation Parade, you know? And when here we are making every effort to acknowledge the greater fiscal picture as it impacts all of our constituents, for me to be observing almost what is a willful blindness to that reality with this kind of travel activity is just, it's very disturbing to me. And it makes me say, you know what? I mean, you're asking for control over even more funding, and these are the kinds of financial decisions that are being made with respect to trips. I do want to take 1 minute to recognize Mayor Lujan from Minarahan, because Mayor, your name isn't on this at all. So you haven't taken a single trip this year, and I applaud you, because there are some names on this list, sir, that have traveled almost every single month. So, as Oversight Chair of the Mayor's Council, in light of this information that we've uncovered recently, given the inquiry that we made with respect to the finances, I'm going to be asking the Chairman of Appropriations to afford us more time, because I think that we're going to have to sit down and have a real heart-to-heart conversation with the Mayor's Council of Guam, across the board, because this legislature isn't just trying to hold this government accountable with respect to its spending. This legislature is doing it. It's doing it. And I will attest to how challenging it is. But the reason why we're doing it is so that we can sit down with everybody and we can say, this is what we have to do, and we're doing it here, and we need you guys to meet us halfway. And so I'd like to request that the Chair of Appropriations give us the opportunity to have these additional meetings with the Mayor's Council, to have these conversations. And perhaps we need to involve other entities as well to go into other subject matters, because this is just one line item in the budget, and it already accounts for a $49,000 expense on travel, with the fiscal year 2017 authorized level only being $40,000. I'm not even sure how that reconciles. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Executive Director, Mayor. Good afternoon. I'm just pointing out the limited gaming fund, and I know we worked with the chair to basically apportion this or to the three entities: DPR, Mayor's Council, and the Department of Education. And I'm just reading in your testimony that how this was allotted or broken down to each mayor at $33,000, or breaking down from 633 and dividing it up equally. But that was a decision made by the council, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Has the council ever thought about doing something similar of what DPR and DOE is doing? I know you have to deal with 19 other mayors, or all 19 mayors, but looking at the needs of and I appreciate the Mayor's Council providing me some of the assessments or a report on what some of the recreation facilities and programs in the communities that you're working on. And I know you noted here that it's kind of slow because of the fact that although you receive this allotment of 633,000, it's portioned out, therefore it dilutes the share or dilutes the amount, and they can't do these large-scale projects that I see in the assessment report. Have you ever thought about working with all 19 mayors and looking at the top 3 in all from the north, central, south that will require a large amount of cost or work, and attack those larger projects that way? Because when we look at DPR and how they're moving with some of their facilities, obviously they don't have to deal with 19 individual mayors. But I'm looking at the assessment report, and I'm just hoping we can take that same approach, because I would like to see more of these facilities within the villages get attention a lot more quicker. I'm not saying they're not getting attention. It's slow, and it's happening. But I think if we approach it, we're looking at the needs of the community where most of our youth, our families participate with whatever the recreation facilities are, that we can approach those facilities first and look at these amounts and attack it that way. I just been monitoring the limited gaming fund since its creation, and I'm just hoping has that thought ever been brought up among the Mayor's Council, of not dividing it among the 19 and just one big project at a time, or 3 big projects at a time?
Senator, your suggestion has been thought of. We've tried to divide the island into 3 different sections, but as Mayor Han can probably attest to you, the mayors are all very territorial. When they have those funds, they're not willing to give it up to another village, especially if it has to do with doing something within their village. So, and that's why you see many of the funding sources are divided equally, because while we have only 4 or 5 big villages, the smaller villages always outvote the bigger villages. So even if we want the bigger villages to get a greater portion of the pie, the group of the smaller villages outvote that, and it ends up being done equally, which is what they agreed to. Just like the road pavement improvement. We can't seem to budge from being able to get that out any other different way, because the smaller the village will say, well, wait a minute, I have roads that are in need of repair just as you and Dededo or Jigo or Tamuning, so why am I going to give you my money and repair your roads before I repair mine? But if you want to send us a letter, I certainly can introduce that over to the officers, and they can bring it out for discussion to the whole body. But we have brought it up before.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I would like to continue working with the council on this, and I know that there's been a lot of movement, though, using the fund. I always share the story of driving by PD across Santos Park, a court that was once not lit up is now lit up, and every night it's busy with children on it, with a lot of kids. And it's nice to see that, and I think we should see that in every community throughout our island. So, but I'm just matching this up with the assessment report that's been provided by the mayors, and I'm assuming that they are accumulating annually from this fund, hopefully to address a larger scale project in their community. But I just think if we look at least the top 3 from the north, central, south, this 633,000 can go a long way if we take it from that end. So I'll be probably working with the chair and maybe coming up some ideas to see how we can help you with that assessment report and move those projects along a lot more quicker. I know you mentioned that with the recycling fund and how you would like to see the same type of method, or as far as allotment provided through the appropriated actually from the recycling fund. Do you feel that if we take that same approach, there'll be a constant movement of addressing these recyclables, white goods, abandoned vehicles,
Well, certainly the use of the recycling fund will be more fluid than the limited gaming fund, because the limited gaming fund is for actual, capital outlay, refurbishing buildings and centers and all that. But the recycling is, we just give each village a certain amount, and they take the white goods, they take the abandoned vehicles, the tires, the batteries, the electronic goods and the loose metals, and they have a separate PO for each of that. So that one would be more fluid, and you will not see no expenditures. You'll see a constant expenditure out of the recycling fund.
Okay. Because I think we saw at one point, or maybe 2 years, we saw an aggressive movement of going out of all the white goods and abandoned vehicles. But then, of course,
There's 1 year that there was no more abandoned vehicles left to pick up, because
Right.
the mayor's office took them all and
Right.
transferred them to the recycling companies. Yeah.
okay, so, okay.
So now it's beginning to build up again. You're beginning to see again abandoned vehicles and white goods, and because we don't have the funding from EPA to do that. We voluntarily bring the items to the recyclers because we understand that they're being paid to process them and take them off island. But it takes a lot of manpower and funds to be able to continue to do that on a weekly basis. One recycling company has offered that they would do it and come to the villages, but their equipment is down, so they can't come and take it. So our mayors have to be the ones to take it out to them.
Just my final comment, Mr. Speaker, I just want to point out, I know the chair of the Mayor's Council, I know he had some very valid concerns to be raised regarding some items he's located within the Mayor's Council. But I also, at least in all fairness to the Mayor's Council, regarding your salary, because it was brought up, I don't think any of you asked for that. It was this body that, by virtue of our support for the budget, that we gave you that raise. So, in all fairness, I know it was brought up. No disrespect to the chair. It's just that by virtue of our support, this body is responsible for making that adjustment, the mayor's salary. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Cruz.
Hafaday, Mr. Saban.
Confident?
I have a question. In my estimate, there's a bit of a conflict in a couple of statements that you made in your testimony. And I just want to ask you, under the Mayor's Council of Guam operations, there's $475,000 that's appropriated annually, right, and divvied up among the villages equally, $25,000?
That's correct.
And in your statement, you mentioned that the mayors depend on this amount to support the request of many villagers' requests. And it further goes on to describe the types of requests made by the villagers, like humanitarian assistance, medical emergencies and referrals, or disasters. But do you mean in the statement that these government funds of $475,000 is being used to give on a individual case-by-case basis at the mayor's discretion money to the residents for maybe personal uses? Is that what this is?
No, it's not for personal use. There's a rigid, actually, process that they have to go through in order to apply for that humanitarian process. They have to have a doctor's signature. They have to have a medical condition that is verified by the doctor. They have to have travel tickets that they have to go to get this medical attention. And the different villages give out between $300 to $500 one time only for these individuals. The other parts of that operation, that's only one type of expenditure for that funding, but the villages also need to operate their offices. They need the paper for the copying machines. They need the toilet paper for the restrooms. They need cleaning supplies. Those are all under that operational.
But the reason I bring that up is you specifically talked about the requests of the village residents, and I know that as government officials, in our capacity as senators, when the same type of people come to us for similar requests with similar documentation evidencing their need, it comes out of our personal pocket, not our office budget. And so that's what I saw as a little bit unusual in the application of $475,000 in government funds for what really amounts to a personal need by the people.
Sarah,
it's a
I can
very
provide
different
you,
type of.
I can provide you the expenditure report as to how many residents have been assisted for those humanitarian requests, but it does not nearly come close to that amount that you're talking about. It's very minimal.
Yeah,
But I just use that as an example.
Because and the reason I bring it up is it conflicts with your recommendation of how to save money, where you requested authorization to utilize a user fee schedule, to implement a user fee schedule through a AAA process to recoup some of the related expenses when you use the mayor's office resources like the canopies and the tents, tables and chairs for your village use, your villagers' use, I suppose, for their personal affairs like their funerals or certain types of events or even parties. Because I know sometimes I've been to parties where I see the mayor's office's assets being used for that. So and that's why I want to ask you, because in one side you're looking at having some sort of a user fee schedule so that people who make use of these government resources pay some sort of fee for the use of that. But then on the other hand, you start off by saying that this operations amount of $475,000 is specifically to address those types of needs, the villagers' needs. So it on one hand, it's a we could use more to give more, and then on the other hand, you're saying we need to have a fee schedule to recoup some of that. So it just concerns me in sorts, because I know that in the practice as elected officials with the Guam Legislature, any solicitation of the sort is treated, if we were to give, Tensuli or Ika or something, it comes out of our salary, never the government salary. So I just wanted to.
But as I said, it is a rigid and strict process. It's just not handing out money to anybody that comes and asks for it. There is a complete process that is completely vetted to make sure that the individual that is requesting is really in need of that medical attention.
But in my realm, it's not allowed, is what I'm saying. In my realm, it's not permitted. I couldn't use my office account to give somebody money in that same way. But it appears in the mayor's council, it is permitted, and that's what I'm saying is a bit of a discrepancy. But thank you for clarifying that, and I would like to maybe see the extent of that.
We'll provide you the expenditure report of the villages and how much they've expended for humanitarian assistance.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Sablan, Mayor Lujan, and Mayor for being here. I too was going to ask about that humanitarian assistance, and so I look forward to seeing that expenditure report, just to see what operations, what counts as operations, I guess, expenditures for the mayor's offices. And I also was going to ask about the new fee schedule that you submitted. I haven't seen it.
We just submitted it this morning.
Okay. Can you just very briefly tell us what are we going to be charging for?
Actually, for canopies and tables and chairs, there is no charge for it. It's just a deposit for them to take it out. It's only when they return it missing or broken or torn or what, where we're suggesting that they just pay the actual cost of when it was purchased, because we lose a lot of chairs. They borrow 100 and comes back only, 85 and 15 are gone, and we have no recourse as to how we're going to get another 15 chairs. So they put a deposit on it. But we're asking for fees to cover for power. You'll notice a different fee for daytime use and a different fee for nighttime use, because nighttime you require the lights be on in the fields or in the volleyball field, the basketball court, the baseball field. So that requires a little bit more expenditure. So we're just looking at between $200 to $300 during the day, and then $300 to $600 during the evening. Use of the community center between $100 and $300. Use of the mayor's office, I think $25. So it's just a very minimal fee to just cover for the power and the water usage, and to make sure that it's cleaned and put back in place the way they found it before they used it. But it's a process that has to go through. So we're going to wait until you have all had the opportunity to look at it and make your recommendations.
Currently, how are the recreational facility utilities paid? Through operations budget?
Yes, there's no charge to anybody. There may be some offices that do charge, like I said, a deposit fee to use it, and that's because there's some entities, some groups that all want to use the field at the same time, and so like in PD, there's competing interests, and one wants to use the baseball field as a practice field for football, wants to use it for actually baseball, and so the mayor has to say, who do I give it to? So they do have some fees that they put in just to reserve the space, but they're not kept.
All right, thank you. And also under operations, it says at the request of the Barragata Mayor's Office for an additional 67, but I can't find that letter. Could you just tell us what
it's
is
not
it?
in your
what
back.
it's for?
I'll provide it to Selena before we leave.
What is it for?
She's asking for some funds I guess she's going to adopt the whole Tejan field here. They have an MOU coming up with Parks and Recreation, and some of the areas in that field require renovations for immediate use.
All right. Mayor Lujan, also could we just get the expenditure report for the host community funding? Does that go through the mayor's council? You
No,
said we could get it directly from the mayors of the
Yes,
two
because
villages?
they administered it on their own. We are not involved.
If you don't mind, if we could just see that. Thank you. And, okay, and then on the limited gaming fund, this is different than the funds that the mayors received from the casino. Is that correct?
There's no, the funds that the mayors receive, if any, from the Liberation festivities is, after all their expenses and costs, the law says that the mayor's council gets 50% and the First Lady of Guam gets 50%. For the past couple of years, we've opted, it's very minimal amount that we get, so we give the entire amount to the First Lady for her use to build that foster home for the children.
And that comes to you directly from the nonprofit that you
that's correct.
contracted
That's
to
correct.
operate.
And then we just turn around and issue a check to the First Lady's Foundation.
And you're saying that that's nominal? Because there were mayors in here at a certain point during that bill's debate saying that they receive money from the nonprofit organization, from the...
Maybe that's during their fiesta, but not for the Liberation.
Oh, they made it sound like that's the money. Well, I want to know, so what other money do the mayors receive that's not listed here that you're aware of?
None that I'm aware.
They
They
said-
have, maybe they have civil wedding funds, and maybe they have some donations that some corporate entities give, but that's not included in funds. That's administered by
Because
the
I thought
executive
they were
officer.
telling us at that time that they needed that money from the casino revenue to that's what they use for Easter egg hunts and festivities like that, the gifts that they buy. Where would that come out of? Which fund here?
As far as I'm aware, they raise their own money for those kind of events. Yeah. The money from the casino, ranges from $400,000 and up, but A large portion of those funds are used for like the fireworks, the security, the entertainment requires a big amount when you're paying at least $500 a night to different people that want to entertain. You know, 3 or 4 different groups that owe $100 a piece, it easily comes up to $500. And so those are the big amounts that are used. It doesn't come out of the Mayor's Council of Guam funds.
All right. Could we also see I guess just a list of the expenditures for the last and the current fiscal year for this compact impact funds?
Yes, I have that. I can also provide
All right,
it.
thank you. And my last question, okay, I guess the abandoned vehicle, you're saying EPA, well, according to
It
this.
used to be called the abandoned vehicle fund.
Right,
but
and that's not in
it's now
use
called
right
the
now.
recycling fund.
Okay, so it's the same, the EPA recycling fund,
Yeah.
but you're not getting any proceeds from that?
We haven't received anything from for fiscal year 17 thus
All
far.
right. How would the 10 new FTEs that you're requesting, what impact do you think that's going to have? Is that going to be, I saw the mayor from Inarahan's letter, so I see the impact that it will have on Inarahan, but in the other villages?
Especially for like Dededo and Jigo. And
Is it
Timon and
for
Manila.
trash or is it for something else?
It's just that, you know, by the time these men and workers finish cleaning up one side of Dededo, the other side needs attention. So they just all need assistance in trying to be able to cover a large area, which is their village.
For cleanup purposes?
Cleanup, road maintenance, or whatever is required by the mayor. You know, these employees, Senator, also work on weekends, and they're not compensated for week because they earn no overtime, nor do they get any increments on an annual basis, different from classified employees. But it's a job for them, and they accept it, so they do it. But like for Dededo and Jigo and Tamuning and Manila, which is actually the largest growing village on the island based on the last population, I can see it where they really, really need additional personnel.
I've seen that too, and I've asked during, visits to Dededo, and, just about how we're going to solve this trash issue. So I think, I'm just curious, what these, it sounds like 2 more staff for 4 villages.
Well, 2 more is not enough, but at least it's a start.
Yeah, it would help.
Yes.
Okay, what about the mayor, Mayor Lujan, in your letter, you say that the mayor's office is now responsible for the pickup of recyclable items. Could you explain what that means? Is that, what do you mean by that?
Because they won't come out to pick it up in the village. We have to pick it up in the village and bring it to them, or else it's going to sit there.
What type of items do you mean
We're
by
talking
this?
about the white goods, we're talking about the tires, talking about the batteries, talking about loose metals. You see the village of the mayor's office of Chalampago, you see once they announce that something's going to happen with these recyclables, people just start either putting it out on curbside or they bring it and put it at the mayor's office in the dark of the night where nobody sees what they're doing. And so it starts to pile up. You go behind the mayor's office in Chalampago and it's like a junkyard because he has all those white goods there.
But isn't there a program with solid waste for everyone who has a trash bin that they can also send in
Twice a year.
Twice a year, right?
Well,
Those big items. You're saying that's not enough? Not enough for our residents? All right.
every time we announce a recycling program, I tell you, they just come out of the boondocks and they start stacking it up somewhere.
All right. And just what about the prior year obligation? What do you have left in prior year obligation?
I also have that information. I can provide that to you.
All right. Is it significant?
Not very much, but we still want to be able to cover for whatever we have in prior year. We've been paying out, but I think for fiscal year 17, we've been covered around 14,000 prior year. But
Okay.
we do anticipate having some for this year that, because the end of the fiscal year doesn't always coincide with when those invoices come in. So by October 1st, they become prior year obligations.
All right. Are the mayors required to submit travel reports at the end of travel or not?
Yes, everyone is.
Oh, they do. All right. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is-
Just for the information of the public, in this last year, we did implement a requirement of the government travel law, and any use of government funds had to be reported to the legislature, which is how the chairman had.
And I will bring that up tomorrow at the council meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to have a conversation about some things that need to be put into perspective. The budget request for the Mayor's Council is $11.33 million, which is almost 50% more than what we operate the legislature on, at around $8 million. Now, I know that some of these funding sources the mayors operate with, some of them are based on formulas, and that's how the mayors get their money. The host community fund is one mandate that's specific to those that were impacted by Audit and Luzon. The highway fund that gets to the mayors is based on a formula on the number of roads, the length of the roads. It's a dated formula that goes back to 2008. But those are two funding sources that are somewhat formula or needs-based. So for every other funding source that the mayors receive, are those all just divided equally among all the villages?
That's what they vote on.
So the answer is yes. Now, that, in the context of what you read in your testimony earlier, it just leaves me with a very difficult thing to consider. And I think it's important for our community to consider it as well. You stated, quote, in your testimony earlier, "Our difficulties occur when we are mandated to do more, respond more, and give more without the corresponding funds to offset the more of what we do provide." Now, when I listen to that, and then I listen to how the mayors choose to just divide all the money equally, you're basically asking other mayors in larger villages to do more
That's right.
than those mayors in those villages that don't have the same population needs.
That's right, because the mandate also, Senator, under Title V, Chapter 40, is that whatever the mayors decide based on their vote, 60% of their vote, that's what they follow. It's mandated in law.
So if we were to just evaluate it strictly from a numbers basis, if we were to take, for example, the largest village and the equal proportion that they receive and divide it by their number of residents, that would basically be...
Dedito will come out to 45 cents per individual, and Yamate will come out with $10-some per individual. I'm just giving that as an example. But yes, you would think that the bigger villages are on the losing end.
And, the politics, and I'll just have a very frank conversation with you, and we'll do it on the record because I think it's important for everybody to hear it.
And I'm glad we're bringing this up because I brought it up before. I said, I just can't figure out a way to be able to give to Dedito and Tamuning and Jigo and Manila a greater share when the votes aren't there to give them the greater share.
And yet, in light of that reality, what we are basically doing is we're providing an unequal level of mayoral services to those individuals who reside in larger villages that are getting a proportional share.
There have been different ideas brought forth. Do we do it by population? Do we do it by property tax being paid by the villages? In that case, Sinania says, well, they'll get the most because they pay the most in property taxes. San Rita would lose, we do it by population, of course. Hagatnya would probably be the biggest loser because there's only 3 people during the weekend. Everybody else is gone out to their villages. They only have a population when they're here working. And we use that only as a jokingly, but Hagatnya would be a big loser because you don't have that many people left here, aside from those that work here. And so our capital would get what? Very little money.
And so, when we have the conversation of like trying to meet the needs in our community, and when we talk about $11.33 million is the budget you're asking for, and then how do we go about hiring more maintenance people? But when a population when a village that has a lower population, lower, congestion, is getting the same maintenance dollars as a village that has 10 times more people, 10 times more urban sprawl. And the reason why it's a difficult conversation to have is because the political realities are that you don't want someone to come back and say, oh, you're picking on the smaller villages. That's not the realistic conversation that we need to have. I think the realistic conversation we need to have is, with the limited resources and the obvious need that comes with larger populations, how do we balance taking care of our lower population villages while also at the same time not grossly underserving our larger ones?
And that's the question that I've always asked, at least since my time over the Mayor's Council, is how do I give the bigger villages when it gets outvoted all the time? And that's why I made the suggestion. Maybe mandate it that the bigger villages would get a bigger share of the base amount that we give. Instead of giving everybody $10,000 across the board, give the big ones $20,000, and then whatever's left over, then you divide that up equally. That way, the bigger villages would get a bigger amount.
Yeah, I was very bothered when I was reading, for example, the limited gaming fund distribution, how everybody got $33,365, except for Dedado that got $1 more.
Yeah.
I was like, is that a typo?
No.
And then I realized, no, you couldn't divide $1 by 19. And I'm like,
Yeah. I hear you, Senator, like I said, and I mean, even Mayor Lujan here would testify. It's something that is brought every time we have funding for something, whether it comes from GVB, whether it comes from Compact Impact, whether it comes from anywhere. It's always, oh, no, we're going to divide it equally. That's the way it comes out. The only reason why others hear the pro rata is because based on road inventory, or when you mandate that you give everybody $20,000 and the rest you divide.
well, let me tell you what I'm going to do. If we, for example, have a fixed amount that gets divided among all the villages, and the largest village, for example, like in your example of Dedado, was getting 45 cents per resident, then maybe that will be the baseline for every village, the amount that has been the lowest per capita for every village. And then after that, every dollar in excess of that will be by population. So for example, if Dedado was receiving, just as an example, 50 cents per resident, then perhaps it's time for us to have a basis of 50 cents per resident in every village. And then once that is fully accounted for, then everything gets divided by population, so that all of the villages are able to have a basis plus an additional based on their population.
I welcome whatever formula you can come with.
Okay.
Senator,
So we're going to have this conversation. I'll be scheduling some oversight hearings in the coming weeks prior to the finalization of the budget, and we'll have this conversation. And we're going to have the difficult sit down at the table and
I welcome
heart to heart.
I mean, I think it's certainly about time. Like I said, I brought it up before, not just in this hearing, but in previous budget hearings, that how do we divide this money so that it will be fair to all?
Because when you boil it down, right, you talk about buying toilet paper. I mean, if you have 10 times more people flushing the toilet, you're going to need 10 times more toilet paper. And it has nothing to do with whether or not you like a bigger village or a smaller village. It's a needs base for our community.
The village of Dedado is like Grand Central Station. I mean, from the time they open in the morning, even before they open in the morning, till after 5 o'clock, the line for people coming in there for verification for this, for verification for SNAP program, verification for driver's license, verification for other things, it's constant. But yet you go to the other smaller villages and there's nobody there. So you have employees that all they do is sit at a table and push paper just to get people out of the door, while you have other places that have that not much to do. So, yes, I hear you.
Okay. So we'll work on it, Mr. Director.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the testimony.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Zablan, Mayor Lujan. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
This budget hearing will now recess until 2 o'clock tomorrow when we meet with the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center.